The next concept is about EJB architecture. Now, what is EJB? We have already seen. So, in case the question comes as what is EJB and explain its architecture, you start with what is EJB from the previous answer and then you include the architecture answer. Now, whether it is architecture or it is architecture components, the answer remains the same. Now, EJB architecture is composed of following components. The very first, we have a EJB server. The second is EJB container. Now these containers, they run on the servers. Now then you have EJBs. These EJBs run on EJB containers. And then you have EJB clients who access the EJBs. And then you have other supporting services, that is JNDI, that is Java Naming and Directory Interface, JTS, that is Java Transaction Service. So let us have a look at what is the work of EJB, that is Enterprise Bean Server, Enterprise Bean Container, Enterprise Beans and the Enterprise Beans clients. So you can just write, some basic 3 to 4 points for each of these components. So we start on with Enterprise Bean Server. So basically Enterprise Bean Server, it provides you a framework for creating, deploying, managing the middle tier business logic. Now what is this middle tier business logic? This is nothing but your EJBs. It provides you an environment where you can execute the applications which are developed using your EJB components. Now inside an EJB server, as I told you earlier also, we can have EJB containers. Is it necessary that one server, one EJB container? No. A server can have multiple EJB containers. And every container's job is to manage the enterprise beans which are inside it. What does EJB server take care of? 1. It takes care of managing and coordinating resource allocation. It takes care of security. It takes care of connection pooling. It takes care of using threads, as well as it provides you access to distributed transaction management services. So that is about EJB server. Now containers, these containers, they run on the servers. So as I told you earlier, one server can have one or more EJB containers. Now the enterprise beans must be placed inside a container to be executed. So all the runtime environment that is needed for the enterprise beans is provided by the container. So all the aspects of enterprise beans operation are handled by a container. So whether it is transaction management, what comes under transaction management? Beginning, starting the transaction, committing the transaction, or either rolling back the transaction. Now whenever we work with enterprise beans, a pool of beans is created. So managing the pool of beans, handling the incoming request, creating the instances of enterprise beans, moving the instances from inactive pool to the active state, ensuring that the threading conditions are satisfied properly. All these tasks, they are performed by the container. Now the next component that we have is enterprise beans. Now these enterprise beans are placed inside the container. So now see the hierarchy. You have a server, inside a server you have container, and inside a container you have enterprise beans. Now the business components which we have developed using EJB architecture are called as enterprise Java bean components, or they are simply called as enterprise beans. You have to understand that enterprise bean is a server-side component that encapsulates the code that has the business logic. So you can either write the word business logic or you can write it fulfills the purpose of application. Now purpose of application is nothing but your business logic. Okay. Now they can be used with other components also to rapidly produce a custom application. So you can combine multiple EJBs together to get a quick application development. The main purpose of introducing EJB or having EJB in the Java EE framework was for building distributed components, so that EJB components can be assembled and reassembled into different distributed application as per your requirement, so that the speed of application development increases. Now next what we have is enterprise bean clients. Now obviously EJB is there on the server, someone has to access it. So enterprise bean clients are standalone applications that give you a user interface on the client machine. So these clients, they are going to make calls to the EJB components. Now these EJB components, maybe they're on the same machine as the client, or they may be there on the different machine as the client. So as I said, the client could be either remote or it can be local. Remote client runs on different machine and a different JVM than the enterprise bean. So the location of enterprise bean is transparent to the remote client. Remote client does not know where the enterprise bean is located, but still it can access it. Local client runs on the same JVM as the enterprise bean, so that the client and the bean are on the same machine. Whenever the client wants to access the bean, it needs two things. One, it needs to find your EJB server, and it should know how to interact with the EJB components. Now, the next aspect of this answer that we are going to cover is the request and response. How do these all components communicate with each other? Right from your server to your client, how does the entire communication take place? So, the client object makes a request for a method on the bean. So, EJB का जो method है, client object requests it. The container comes into picture now. Remember, container handles everything which is related to the EJB. It handles the entire runtime environment for EJB. EJB, that is your bean. So now container comes into picture. It checks whether the client is approved for calling a method on the bean. So checking is done here. If the client is authorized, a new instance is created, or it activates a requested bean from the pool. So if the pool is already into existence, one of the bean is requested, one of the instance is activated, else a new instance is created. Okay, now the container also assures that the bean gets its own new transaction. So every request is handled as a new transaction. The container informs the EJB object that the bean is ready, and it passes the client's method request to the bean, and then the method gets executed and the client gets the response. That is how everything works. That's it for this answer. Thank you.